Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, consider subscribing as it helps out the channel, and give this video a like if you do like it. This is a review for Hush My Mouse, and joining me for this review is my good friend Matt Hunter. Say hi.
Hi.
Oh, and also my good friend Luke Perkins as well. Sorry, I nearly forgot you.
Phew.
So this was released in 1946, it's the 472nd in the series, and it's directed by Chuck Jones. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Mouse Chronicles Blu-ray set, and I'll have a link below to that set. Now, due to copyright, I can't show the full cartoon here, and really, it's a review, so you wouldn't watch the full thing anyway whenever you see a review. In any case, in case you haven't seen this one, we are in Tuffy's Tavern, where an Edward G. Robinson cat, yes, an Edward G. Robinson cat, wants some mouse knuckles. So, a dumb cat is sent to get a mouse for these mouse knuckles, and this dumb cat is constantly tricked by the ever-blabbering Sniffles, and hilarity ensues.
If I did, I wouldn't like tiny little knuckles like mine. I'd want great big mouse's knuckles. Do you want me to get you some great big mouse's knuckles? Now, you just shut your eyes and I'll be right back with some great big mouse's knuckles.
Gee, that's very much obliged of him.
Now what you're about to see is a remix of a commentary that I did not too long ago, which I had to take down due to a legal request by Warner Brothers. So sit back, relax, and watch the remixed audio commentary.
I got the knuckles. Fellican, here I am with me life in Picardy, and you have the verve to come back empty-handed.
The last Sniffles. And it's also not only the last Sniffles, but it's the second in a row for Chuck Jones to be a radio show parody. You talked about Quentin Quayle a while back, and that was a parody of Fanny Brice's radio program, and this one is a parody of a show that was really popular at the time and is virtually unknown today, and it was called Duffy's Tavern. You'll notice that the location that this takes place is called Tuffy's Tavern. He's got a kind of a dumb, waiter assistant in the show, and his name is Finnegan, and this one is Filligan. But that's what they're making fun of here, in addition to Edward G. Robinson, see? Yeah. It's a parody of that show, which always, if you look it up on YouTube, you can hear it. Always it opened with this guy, the bartender, answering the unseen and never heard Duffy over the phone.
So, with this being the last Sniffles, short, but he actually had a different life after this short, or even during this short, rather, period, like in the comic books.
Yeah, well, I mean, well into the 1960s. Starting when he was created back in the late 30s and going into the 1960s, he had a comic book series in the Looney Tunes and Merrie Melodies comics for Western Publishing that was called Mary Jane and Sniffles. A well-known Disney artist named Al Hubbard for a while drew a lot of those, and they were very, very popular. It was a main feature in the Looney Tunes comics long after the Sniffles cartoons ended, and it was the idea of Chase Craig, who was an editor at Western and Dell at the time, and he thought to pair him with a little girl named Mary Jane and give him this magical power to shrink her to mouse size. And then they would go on these little fantasy adventures, and probably were what justified why there was also Sniffles merchandise for a long time. And part of that, I think, the reason that started in the first place was because after Leon Schlesinger sold the studio and retired, he was kind of the head of the merchandising for the characters. And Sniffles had been a hit, and Schlesinger liked him almost like he also really liked Porky. And so, yeah, I mean, there were planters and banks and figures and, all kinds of stuff. I've seen placemats with Sniffles. So he was still pretty popular, and the cartoons were reissued well into, I guess, the 60s, as Blue Ribbons. So
Chase me up a mouse muy pronto. Okay, Odd, I'll get your mouse, and my name ain't F-I-L-L-I-G-A-N.
I love the animation that we just saw there of the dumb cat just lifting up his nose and hitting the other character under his chin. Just the little touches like that I always love, especially in Chuck Jones shorts.
Yeah, and you're starting to see more of that in the Chuck Jones cartoons now. You know, he's getting away from the kind of Disney cute kind of cartoons that he'd been making earlier, even to the point that Sniffles in this cartoon is more of a funny side character than he is an active cute character. Here he's a chatterbox, and he just kind of keeps tricking this cat.
He's a side character just like in The Unbearable Bear, which is another one I actually really love. Maybe slightly more than this one because that one just has insane backgrounds, but this one's very solid too. And he was also in Lost and Foundling. That was the last time he was an active character.
And that's just kind of a lot different from, you know, Sniffles trying to collect an egg or Sniffles trying to put a bell on a cat. You know, it's a very different type of character.
Exactly. Because I want to also point out the restoration here and how interesting it can be, because you'll notice that the title cards looked a little soft. Maybe they recovered the original titles, I don't know. The first half of this looks incredibly sharp, but then the second half looks incredibly soft. And by no means is this a bad restoration, but it just goes to show how much work they have to do in order to restore these things sometimes. They have to go to different elements and sources.
Yeah, the light in the background there, you know, you see that glow. That's really, you know, something you never even saw in the old TV print. You know, all these lighting effects that went into these cartoons.
Yeah, exactly right.
The way I remember seeing this cartoon was on Cartoon Network, and it was the old Blue Ribbon version. Obviously, they found the titles somewhere. And those titles were probably not on the same element that they used to restore the rest of it. You know, like they probably had to use a print from someplace like UCLA or Library of Congress, and then they probably used the original negatives to whatever point they were usable. So there were probably a couple of different elements used, and it really looks beautiful, though.
What are your general thoughts on Sniffles as a character? Because you're probably the first person that actually likes the character that I've had on this channel.
I like this one especially, and I like the kind of later Sniffles like this, where he's actually kind of a funny, you know, guy who won't shut up. But you know, some of the earlier ones, they're beautiful to look at. The animation is gorgeous. Even if they're not necessarily funny, there's something to them. You know, he's a charming character. I kind of like. There's one where he goes camping and he's reacting to all these different, you know, noises that go bump in the night, you know, and it's really creative. It's kind of like that scene in Disney Snow White where she finds herself in the woods and she's scared by all the stuff going on. You know, it's pretty good. And by the way, I think this is the last cartoon, just by the way, that used the Porky Pig drum ending for That's All,
I think
folks.
so. Yeah, it'd be around this time at least.
Today.
Yeah, so, you know, an end of an era in many different ways. I mean, you know, just to give my thoughts on Sniffles, because, you know, people do want to also hear my opinion too. See, I was not the biggest fan of the early stuff, but as you've mentioned, Matt, they look incredible, especially on that Mouse Chronicles Blu-ray set, which can easily be bought today. You know, shameless plug, you know, click my description below to pick one up if you haven't. But they still look gorgeous.
That's probably why they devoted a whole disc, a whole set to those, because they're just so mind-boggling when all we saw for years were old Blue Ribbon copies that were faded and some of them, you know, time compressed, and they just look terrible. And then you see them on the new set and you're like, holy crap, these are actually really beautiful cartoons.
Exactly right. Even if they're not, as you say, they're like not haha funny or anything, at least they're just gorgeous to see. And it would be nice if Disney can take some cues from those restorations on how their films should be looking from the 40s, but that's another topic entirely.
Yeah, they've gotten to the point where they remove so much film grain on those things that they start removing elements of the background, and that's a problem. That's vandalizing more than it's helping. So
exactly, but that's of course another topic. I mean, if you guys want to hear a podcast about that topic, let me know in the comments below. And as an added bonus, here's my good friend Luke Perkins to discuss this cartoon, who's also a Sniffles fan, so I figured let's give Sniffles his due.
Phew! Made it to a Sniffle short, albeit the last one, that is. I'm one of the few people around here who actually like Sniffles not only as a character, but also I enjoy his two types of personalities. One of them being the cutesy-wootsy Disney personality of his earlier shorts, and the other one being the delightful chatterbox of his later shorts. And even with this being his last, I honestly wish Chuck did more just as he was about to really get there. Now, here's the thing about this cartoon that's fascinating to me. Despite the cartoon starring Sniffles himself, he doesn't even show up until 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Yes, I counted into the cartoon. And yet he's used very well despite being used very sparingly. His cute voice, delivered greatly by Marjorie Tarleton, mixed with the fast talking and the great energy from the great Chuck Jones animators in this cartoon, makes for quite a laughing fit in my book. And with him being a chatterbox comes some great, you might miss it if you don't listen to it. With him being quite a chatterbox, he's very fast talking that if you're solely listening to what he's hearing, he sounds like he's absolutely crazy and it's absolutely hilarious. Also, if I'm correct, I believe Ken Harris also does some of the opening shots here too, with the introduction shot of the manager Ann Finnegan as well. I'm not really an expert on Ken Harris animation, but if you look very carefully, his animation could be rather sort of specific, almost quite subtle in a way. If I'm correct, also, Basil Davidovich animates edgy Robin Cat trying to reach for something in that empty bag, which is his foot, and he falls for the foot in bag gag that Basil animates very well. Also, again, look at this amazing dog design. Look at it. It looks so good. Like, seriously, Chuck Jones was absolutely great at doing some character designs, and his animators were absolutely great at animating it, whether it be loose or angular in some sort of way. I don't know. Chuck Jones, to me, Chuck Jones always nailed it in sort of a character acting sort of way, in my opinion. I definitely love the other directors in their own way. There's something about Chuck Jones that actually has a reason that makes him stand out from the rest in some sort of way, in my opinion. In a way, it all comes down to contrast, with the innocent wit of Sniffles contrasting with the absolute dim wit of an idiot of Finnegan the Cat. And I personally think they play off each other very well. The way Sniffles talks in this cartoon almost looks like he could spoil some big summer blockbuster in under 7 minutes, and it would probably be more entertaining than the summer blockbuster himself. Well, it's a shame that this was Sniffles' last cartoon just as he was about to really get there. This definitely ended Sniffles' career with a bang, and I'm glad to say that this cartoon is a fun watch.
As for a rating, look, Matt told me he would give this one a 6 out of 10. I'm pretty sure Luke Perkins will give it much higher, of course, based on what he said about the short. As for me, look, 6.5 or 7 out of 10 maybe? I don't know. I think it might depend on my mood, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I think this is definitely one of the better Sniffles shorts, and, you know, it's got its funny moments, especially with the Edward G. Robertson cat character. So good.
Listen, you mug, can the gab, see? Bring me them mouse knuckles, see? Yeah, mouse knuckles, yeah, see?
I see.
But we'll wrap this one up as we won't see Sniffles until Space Jam. Maybe he'll be in Space Jam 2, I don't know. We'll see, because it hasn't come out when this was recorded. But, yeah, thanks very much for listening, guys. And until next time, take care.
Okay, Tuffy. I will ask him, does he still want the mouse knuckles? Hang on! I don't think he needs the mouse knuckles, Tuffy, but he sure could use some brass knuckles.
That's all, folks.